This is poetry.
Poetry is like a way of life.
Anything that expresses someone's emotions.
Poetry, songs, and all your feelings put into words.
I don't feel qualified to answer this question.
I think poetry is love.
I think every major conflict can be traced back to Emily Dickinson.
Poetry can be put into anything like dance or music.
To me, I think poetry is a way of telling a story that maybe lends itself to adding a little bit more emotion.
How do you see poetry translated through art?
Well, I think everybody who reads a poem takes something different away from it, just as everyone who looks at art takes something different away from it. In other words, it has different meanings to different people. That's why I think that they're so much alike.
Poetry and art have always been grouped together in the past, but today art and poetry have branched out into different fields, where really anything can be classified as either or. For example, graffiti is respected as art, and so is a giant balloon dog sculpture. Both of these things could also be just as poetic as an Emily Dickinson poem. I think this is where the line between art and poetry is blurred. The Renaissance artists like Da Vinci and Michelangelo painted beautiful Bible scenes which depicted emotional journeys and truly showcased their talents. But today, landscapes and still lives are painted to show skill, and in this case, emotion is totally kicked to the curb.
I think that a lot of what you see today is based on emotion, but when you look at a painting by one of the old masters, you can see more of a story happening.
Do you find that most art students want to work on skill in their artwork, or do they want to try to work on putting more emotion into their artwork?
I think it depends on the age of the student. I think some of the younger students, teens in particular, are more into the emotion. And I think the older students, middle-aged and older, really want to get the skills down.
But modern poetry can still take the reader on a touching journey, and the reader will most likely always take something away.
I think being a poet and an artist in the same sense, you can tell a story through art naturally, and you can take it wherever you want to take it and put your emotion into it, more so than just telling a story with just the facts.
Can poetry still be found within today's modern art? Can art and poetry even still be categorized together, or has art taken an unimpressive turn and left all its emotion to poetry? I believe in the 21st century, poetry has devolved from being the skeleton of all art to an added bonus when an artist feeds their emotion into their work. I suppose it all comes down to this question: who is to say what is and isn't art? Which is a question that no one can really answer. This is why there isn't a definitive answer as to if poetry can still be seen in today's modern art or not. It all depends on the viewer.
So like art in its like physical form and like pictures and mosaics and stuff, you don't think that could be poetry? I don't know. It could lend itself to poetry. It could like help contribute. It could increase meaning.
Art isn't limited to one medium. It can be anything, and poetry is art.
Are we an item? Girl, quit playing. We're just friends. What are you saying? Say, there's another. Looked right in my eyes. My first love broke my heart for the first time.
What's the most meaningful song to you?
I like the song Fool on the Hill by the Beatles. I think it's really meaningful because it speaks about not being heard.
Do you think music is poetry? Music and poetry together, they're both ways to express yourself. Even Justin Bieber's song Baby, do you think that's, no? That is not poetry. Why is that not poetry? It's repetition of words. I know there's a type of poetry, but that's not it.
I think sadly that does express the voice of our generation, and how a lot of people feel about life and occupy their time. I don't think that the emotions run deep enough in it to be considered poetry.
There's like a few, like there's exceptions of course. There's like a few rap songs I like that convey a message, because I think rap could be interpreted as poetry.
Do you think music is poetry?
Music's just poetry with a rhythm, and I like it a lot.
Do you think music is poetry?
Yes.
Even pop songs today on the radio? poetry with less meaning.
Do you think the music is too shallow though? I feel like the music is too shallow.
Do you think even songs like Katy Perry, like Last Friday Night, do you think that's poetry or?
I mean, there's a lot of joke poems out there. Like, I mean, if like the paddle once, paddle twice, like Chicken Soup song is like poetry, then like why wouldn't anything be poetry?
Well on the way, head in a cloud. The man of 1,000 voices talks perfectly loud, but nobody ever hears him or the sound he appears to make, and he never seems to notice.
Day after day, alone on a hill, the man with the foolish grin is keeping.
How would you define poetry?
I think it's like an expression of words, thoughts and feelings through like words and rhyming.
Do you believe you see poetry in everyday life? And if so, where?
Yeah, I guess like you see it in like nature and music and like just like society as a whole.
How do you believe the creation of online blogging websites affects the poetry world?
I think it just gives everyone a chance to like express their feelings more, and you hear a lot more from like people all around the world, so you like get a view of like other people's perspectives and like their type of like how they feel.
Which social media and blogging websites are you on and why?
I use Facebook like every now and then, like Twitter too, but I mostly use like Tumblr. It's easy to like express yourself there, like reblog other people's stuff if you like feel the same way, I guess, and post your own stuff.
What forms of poetry, if any, do you see on Tumblr?
I don't know, some people post like lyrics and stuff like on an artsy picture, and it's like, okay. For a lot of people, I think the lyrics matched with an image like makes it more inspirational in a way. Just like it makes it visually appealing because of the picture.
Every person has a different definition of poetry, so what one person considers poetry, another person might not, so it all depends on your own opinion.